Hello everybody and welcome along to this afternoon's webinar. My name's Calvin and I will be your host and presenter for today. Today's subject is sick pay made simple. So we're going to be looking at everything to do with SSP or statutory sick pay. I'm joined in the session by both Matt and Matthew. So we've got the two Matts in today, or Matt squared as I've been so nicely putting them for today. There are enablement specialists. So we've got a couple of special guests in who will be helping to answer any questions that you may have throughout the session today. So we are going to be firstly looking at an introduction to statutory sick pay. So an overview of what it is, what the qualifying criteria is, etc. Then we're going to move into how you can record that sickness in Sage 50 Cloud Payroll. So there are a couple of ways you can do this, and we will cover both those, and we'll jump into a bit of a product demo for that as well. Next, we'll then move into what to do to adjust your employees' pay. So how can you adjust your employees' pay to account for statutory sick pay? That is if you have a company sick pay scheme that tops up their wages to their full normal salary, for example, or if you'll just have to prorata some of the salary for a couple of weeks and then the remaining weeks are classed as statutory sick pay. So we'll be running through that as well. Then we're going to have a look at some troubleshooting common SSP issues. So we've got a few steps there, or a checklist, as it were, almost, just to check a few things if you're curious as to what might have happened with anything statutory sick pay wise, or if you think something may have gone a little bit awry. There are a couple of things to check to make sure everything is okay. And then we are going to finish off with a quiz, so a little bit of interactivity for everyone. Don't worry as well, the quizzes are completely anonymous. We will be revealing results, but that is just simply a percentage of who answered what. So they are completely anonymous, but we'll be having a couple of questions and the answers are within the presentation today. So a little hint there. And then finally, we'll run through some further support and we'll spend a bit of time at the end to answer any remaining questions we have to ensure we get as many questions answered as possible. So that is the contents of today. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. And we'll start with our introduction to statutory sick pay. So firstly, what is statutory sick pay? Well, SSP is statutory sick pay. So that is the abbreviation of it. And it is paid to employees when they're ill and unable to work. You, of course, can pay more if you have a company sick pay scheme. That choice is down to yourselves and your company policies. The standard rate this year, or this tax year, is £99.35 per week for up to 28 weeks. So for more info on that, there is one of those clickable links available. There are a few qualifying conditions to look for as well. So the first one is they must be employed by you. They must also be off sick for 4 or more days in a row. So 4 or more qualifying days in a row. They must also earn at least £123 a week on average. They must also notify you of their sickness. So that will either be the self-certification for the first 7 days, or of course, a sick note from their GP or doctor. Which then ties me into the next point there. So that proof of illness after 7 days. So again, they must notify you. So they're telling you that they're off sick. They're not just not turning up. And they must give you the proof of illness after 7 days off as well. Again, more on the qualifying conditions can be found in that link at the bottom there. So there are a couple of general rules when it comes to SSP as well. So you only pay SSP for qualifying days, as I mentioned, and that will be determined by the qualifying day pattern, but we'll be getting into that when we look to record the sickness. You pay SSP on the employee's normal pay date, so the pay dates don't change, stays exactly the same as it would normally. And the first 3 qualifying days are classed as waiting days when no SSP is payable. That's where the 4 days in a row come from, because the very first 3 of them are classed as waiting days. PIWs are linked, so that's periods of incapacity to work are linked if the gap between them is 8 weeks or less. So if they are off sick again, 8 weeks or less after their first instance, they are classed as linked and then obviously contribute towards that 28-week total. Period of linked sickness must also be 4 days or longer to then qualify for further SSP. Okay, so that is the general overview of what SSP is and some of the qualifying criteria. We're going to have a look into recording sickness now. So the fun part, as it were, we're going to dive into the program and show you how you would record sickness in Sage 50 Cloud Payroll. So the first one, there is a couple of ways you can do it here. So the first bit is quick SSP. So that's the quick SSP option. And we'll be demoing both of these in a moment. So we'll just run through the slides first, and then I'll dive into the program and we'll show you both of these ways or methods in action. Because the second option there, you've got your employee record and the absence diary. So you can do it directly through the absence diary. Now, neither of these is the right or wrong one. It is completely up to you and what you prefer and how you prefer to enter that as well. When you come to recording the sickness in Sage 50 Cloud Payroll, whether you do it via the quick SSP option or the absence diary, this will both update that absence diary itself so you can have a look with a few different symbols. So I'm just going to run through what they mean and you'll see them in the demo. So the X, or a capital X, is a waiting day. The capitalization comes after you've updated records, so then it becomes historical. So that's one way of checking whether or not you've already paid for that SSP or whether it's due to be paid. So when it's lowercase, it's current. When it's uppercase, it's historical. P, for any paid SSP days. So for any days they are due any SSP or have been paid, you will either have a lowercase or uppercase P. You have a dash or an equal sign for non-qualifying days. Of course, a dash does not have capitalization, so it turns into an equal sign as well. So it gains an additional dash. And those are for any non-qualifying days. The A is for any sickness less than 4 days in a row. So if you see any red A's on that absence diary, it is likely due to them being less than 4 days in a row. I'll show you that how that works in the demo, but you'll see that tends to relate when it comes to a linked period of sickness. And then finally, you have a W, which is where the SSP has been withheld for sickness, and that could be due to a lack of a sick note, for example. So you're waiting for the employee to provide you with evidence so you can withhold the sickness for that as well. And on the right-hand side there's a bit of a screenshot. So we talked about the qualifying day pattern, and that's the working day pattern basically. And this is what's used to determine what days are qualifying and what days are not qualifying. Now it works from a Sunday to Saturday basis. So you can see in the example there, we have N followed by 5 Qs followed by N. That's your standard Monday to Friday working pattern. Now, of course, this is maybe different when you have shift workers. So you may have employees who are on a shift rotation. So they may do Monday to Friday, then they may do Tuesday to Saturday, Wednesday to Sunday, and so on a rotation of, say, 10 weeks. You would just put each of those 10 different working day patterns in that box there, and then choose a pattern start date. So when did that pattern begin? And then it will cycle around automatically. Of course, if they're on one working day pattern, then it is the same. And a quick note on that, if you have any casual workers who are on 0-hour contract, for example, don't exactly have a full working day pattern, you would simply add in all Qs for that. So every day would be classed as a qualifying day in that regard. There is one other thing and one actual final way you can record sickness if you need to, and that's through enter payments. You can edit or delete any current sickness at this point. So if you have ended all your sickness, you've got to the enter payment stage, you're ready to process the pay, but you've realized there's a day missing or there's too many days been added, you can edit in this section here. So it's on the SSP/parental leave tab within enter payments to save you having to come out and then go back into the employee record. And of course, at this stage, you can check the SSP payable and the SSP weeks. So that's the slides out of the way for this section. So what we'll do now is I'm going to pull up my Sage 50 Cloud Payroll and we'll jump in and we'll show you those methods in action. So here we are. in our payroll program. So we've got employee 9 here who has a few days sick. So I've left the processing at August because we're going to do September's pay, just with us being at the beginning of October at the moment. We'll go back in time a little bit for this one. So employee 9 was off a few days sick. He was off a couple of weeks within September. So we need to now record that. So we'll say that that employee was off from the 12th to the 25th. So we're going to do with the quick SSP option first. And to do that, you would be clicking Payroll. And then in the links section on the left-hand side, there is a recording sickness button. A quick tip when it comes to that links, if you can't see this, you see you've got this gray line here. If you hover over that, you can actually expand this section just to show more options if you're unable to see it. So click recording sickness, and there is our quick SSP option there. Now, quick reminder of the dates. I did say them just earlier, the 12th to the 25th. That's right. So first day of sickness was the 12th of the 9th, 2022. And the last day was the 25th of the 9th, 2022. If they are off sick continuously, the best advice on this one would be to enter in their last day of sickness your current processing date, as SSP is paid, and like all statutory payments in Sage 50 Cloud Payroll, it's calculated using your process date. So it will pay up to and including your process date, because you then can continue on that sickness in the next pay period if you need to. Once you've entered the dates in, all you have to do is click Calculate Entitlement. Here in this section, it will work out what the entitlement is due. So you know that this employee is going to be due £139.09. You can obviously withhold the SSP payments if you need to. You can check the qualifying days as well. It also gives you what the employee's average earnings were as well. So I'm not going to save that, because what we're going to do now is that's quick SSP, and due to its name, as you can see, it's relatively quick. So what we'll do now is let's jump into the employee record, and I'll show you how to enter sickness via this way. So we're in the employee record now. We're going to jump along to the absence tab, and here is our absence diary, as you can see. Now, I'll be honest, this is actually my preferred method, but obviously everybody's different. Now you can check average earnings by clicking on the SSP button, and you just enter the start of PIW. At the minute, it's defaulted as the 30th of September because I haven't entered any sickness in yet. And it's just defaulted to what my process date is, as you can see in the bottom right there. But what we'll do now is let's enter some sickness. So we've got September here. We know that this is the 12th, so if I click on that day, you'll see that it gives you the date. So if I click, hold, and drag all the way along to the 25th, as I mentioned, you'll see there that is their period of sickness. Now all I have to do is right-click on this and select SSP, and then due to sickness. Of course, here's where you can withhold the payments if you need to. Due to sickness, you can pop in a note. We'll just say flu for this example. And there you'll see the sickness has been entered, and there we see some of those symbols. Now we know that the first 3 working days, the first 3 qualifying days are classed as waiting days. So there we have some X's, followed by a couple of P's. This person works Monday to Friday. Then a couple of dashes on the Saturday, Sunday, because they don't work Saturday, Sunday. Now, if you ever need to delete any of the sickness as well, just highlight the days that you need to delete, right-click again, and click None. Now, you can only do this if they are in lowercase or singular dashes, if they have not been updated. You'll see that the waiting days have moved along. And what I do want to show you at this stage as well is a common mistake we see come into our support teams. And that is when an employee has a slightly longer period of sickness, but they have that working day pattern of Monday to Friday. We do see cases where people will enter the Monday to Friday as sickness, which if that is the days they're off sick, then that's absolutely fine to do. They're expected back on the Monday, but they don't come back. They're actually offering a further 3 days, and they don't actually come back until the Thursday. So what they'll do is come back into the diary and just highlight the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and put due to sickness. And you'll see what happens there. We have those 3 A's we talked about. Now, the reason we have these 3 A's is because it is classing it as a linked period because of the Saturday and Sunday. Now, even though they don't get paid for those days and they're not qualifying days, they still need to be included in the sickness recording. And the reason for that is because of those linked periods. So if I were then to go and correct that, you'll see they've now turned to those P's. So even if they don't work the days, that's what the working day pattern is for. Just highlight them anyway. Okay, so that's a top tip there. So don't leave any blank spaces if it's a continued period of sickness. Otherwise, you may find you'll get some of those pesky A's in the way. If you need to check again, average earnings, pop into the SSP tab button. Here we've got our average earnings again. There's our qualifying day pattern. So if you need to add an additional line, just click underneath. You've got some presets if you need to, or all you would do is type in. So if we do this, there you go. Don't forget it's Sunday to Saturday. Now what that would do is it would cycle through those 2 weeks starting from the 5th. So if this is where that working day pattern started, it would just cycle through those. If you need to delete, simply highlight them all, click backspace on your keyboard, and that will delete the pattern from that. So that's how you would set the working day pattern. So let's save that record now, close out, and let's head into enter payments. And again, if we head on over to our SSP option, you'll see a little snippet of the diary there. And in there, you'll be able to see all those symbols after that we saw earlier, as well as how much SSP is payable and any SSP weeks that are payable. Now we know it's 1 because you can see there's 5 P's there. Now, if you remember earlier, when we did quick SSP, we went and we were using the dates the 12th to the 25th. Now I've I deliberately left them off so I can show you this. So we're in enter payments now, and I've gone, oh no, I've totally forgot about the last couple of days, all the way up until the 25th. What do? I don't need to close out of here, go back into the record, add them in, save it, come back out, go back and enter payments. I can just simply highlight those days in here as I did earlier. So click and drag, right click again in exactly the same manner and add in that additional sickness, and you'll see our SSP payable has changed, as has our SSP weeks. And that's all there is to it when it comes to recording sickness. So those are the ways to do that. Of course, it's up to you how you would like to. So if you prefer quick SSP, that's absolutely fine. If you prefer entering it in the diary, which is how I prefer it personally, then it's up to you as well. Jumping back to our presentation, it's now time to move on to the next session. And that is adjusting your employees' pay. So the first one is the Makeup Basic option. And I'll show you this in action as well. So the Makeup Basic option, this will prorata your regular pay to include any statutory sick pay in order for that employee to receive their regular pay. So for example, I'll use some easy numbers for this one, just for my personal maths. If the employee gets £2,000 gross pay per month regularly, that's their salary. But this time they're getting £500 in SSP because they've been off sick for some of it. If I were to hit the Makeup Basic, it would reduce their gross salary from 2,000 to 1,500, so that it then includes the additional 500 SSP, so that their total gross pay remains at £2,000. So that is what the Make Up Basic option does. And I'll show you how that works in the program in a moment. And there is a quick note on that, is to not click it more than once. I'll show you why in a minute. The next option is the more basic option, but it is the manual adjustment. So now this can be if you are having to prorata the actual employee's pay because you don't have a company sick pay, but they weren't off the entire month. If they were monthly paid, for example, you need to prorata that payment. So unfortunately, this is where a bit of manual work comes in. Simply work out how much it is using a trusty calculator, as we've got a screenshot there, and then popping that amount in the rate option. Okay, so let's jump back into the program. I'll show you that Make Up Basic option as well. So we stick in Enter Payments because this is where you can find that Make Up Basic. Just to illustrate the point, this person, not easy figures this one, but gets £2,083.33 for their regular salary. However, if I go over to the summary page, you'll see currently they're getting their regular salary plus any statutory sick pay. So they're actually getting paid more than they would normally for being off sick. So if I go ahead and click the Make Up Basic option and then click yes to that message, just explaining what it does, then go to payments, you'll see the hours and number there has changed to 0.9332 in order to give us an amount here to factor in how much the sick pay is. So we go back to our summary, you'll see that our total gross pay is in fact £2,083.33 as it should be. And that's it. So that's all that Make Up Basic does. It just saves you that hassle of having to manually work it out. Now, I mentioned earlier not to click it twice. I'll just show you what happens if you do. So if I hit it again, I get the same message, hit yes. You'll see it's slowly reducing it again. So it now thinks that the previous reduction is their regular salary. So it's reducing it once more. So if you remember this figure here, so £1,805.15. If I go ahead and click it a third time, you'll see what the total gross appears in this screen, £1,805.15. So basically what it's taking as gospel is what's left in that section. So if you need to readjust it, don't forget to pop back into the hours and make sure that is correct. So go back to 1 and then you can hit Make Up Basic once more. So that's just an example of don't hit that button twice. Okay, so on to the next section before we hit that quiz. I'm conscious we're running a little behind, but we'll get everything covered, so don't worry. Okay, so what to check when it comes to troubleshooting. So the first one is the process date. As I mentioned, the SSP is paid up to and including the process date. So if statutory sick pay is not the amount that you think it should be, check what your process date is set as, and that will be what it's calculating up to. So that's probably the more simplest of solutions, is just to double check the process date. Next, diary entries. So check what symbols are appearing in that diary. For example, if you forgot to add in the weekends, if they're Monday to Friday, and you've got 3 red A's, as we showed you in that example, that could be a reason why the employee is not getting the sick pay that they should be. Of that, again, make sure the qualifying days, is it the right working pattern? Do you have Monday to Friday as a qualifying days period set when it should be? Tuesday to Sunday, for example. So make sure your qualifying days is set correctly. Next one again is the average earnings. So it's going through the criteria. So let's make sure that they're hitting all of the criteria to be eligible for it. So are they earning £123 a week? Is that their average earnings? And lastly, the previous PIW. So have they had a previous period of sickness? And did that already take up their entire 28 weeks that they are due? Because if they have had a next period of sickness within the 8 weeks, they are then no longer eligible for any further statutory sick pay. So if they had their full 28 weeks, they can't be off for at least another 9 weeks before they're eligible for any more statutory sick pay. So those are some troubleshooting steps just to go through. So these will be found in the handout as well. So don't forget to drop that and download that as well, because that will be very useful for you as a bit of a checklist if you need to. Okay, so that's the main bulk of the presentation wrapped up. But what we'll be doing now is we're going to just go through a little bit of a quiz, and we'll recap some of the stuff that we've just gone through, and we'll test your memories, as it were. Now we're going to use the polls for this. So what you'll see on screen will be the question along with a few of the answers. So we will start with the very first question, which is, what is the weekly rate of SSP in the current tax year? So when it comes to the weekly rate of statutory sick pay in the current tax year, what is the weekly rate? So we've got three options: £96.35, £101.10, and £99.35. Now in the presentation, I threw in a little bit of a curveball, and I wonder if anyone has noticed that as well, just to test the attentiveness a little bit. So we'll have this up for a minute. I can see there's loads of questions coming in, so again, keep them coming, and we'll spend a little bit of time at the end to make sure we get as many answered as possible. Maths are doing a fine job so far. Okay, we'll leave that up for 10 more seconds. I can see so many of you have already joined in with this, so thank you so much. Hopefully these quizzes are something that you enjoy, and we'll try to build them into more of our sessions. Okay, so we will close that one now, and we will share the results. So we'll do it question by question. So let's share those results. 85% of you said £99.35, and 85% of you are correct. Now the curveball I throw in, and the 14% of you may have fell for it a little bit, I don't know, but was one of the screenshots in the presentation. We had the date set from 2021 and a previous tax year, which gave us a full week's worth of sick pay at £96.35. So that was last tax year. So again, not wrong, just a year behind, unfortunately. But yes, it is £99.35 for this current tax year. Now, what it will be next tax year, we'll have to wait for our next big budget to come out. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. We'll get that. So how many consecutive days does an employee need to be off for during a linked period of sickness to resume any statutory sick pay payments? Is it 3 days, is it 1 day, or is it 4 days? So how many consecutive days does an employee need to be off? Again, we'll leave this on for a bit of a minute, and don't forget, whilst these are running as well, feel free to keep asking any questions that you may have throughout. Okay, we've got this 10-second warning before we close this one, and we'll move on to the next. Of course, reveal the answers as well. Okay, we'll close that one now. We've hit our full minute. And again, we'll share the results. So, a bit more of a spread, but we still had a vast majority. 80% of you said 4. And again, 80% of you were absolutely spot on. That's correct. So it is 4 more days they have to be off consecutively in order to qualify for any sick pay in a linked period. Now, if you imagine that they basically have to go through their 3 waiting days again, but if they have got 4, rather than not being paid for them this time, it will get paid, but it has to be a minimum of 4 further days in a linked period. So if you remember the red A's, that was one of the reasons why. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. So this one is regarding the average weekly pay. So what is the minimum average weekly pay to qualify for statutory sick pay? Is it £125? Is it 120? Or is it 123? And again, we'll leave this running for a minute. Just like to take this quick time whilst you get your answers in to let you all know that there will be a recording of today's session. So if there's anything you need to go over again on recap, there will be a recording sent once the session has come to an end. And after it's all been processed, it usually takes about an hour. Keep an eye on an email coming through that will say thank you for attending. And you'll see a watch now link in there as well. So there will be a copy of today's session as a recording being sent afterwards. Okay, again, we go down to the 10-second warning for this one. Okay, that's the full minute again. So let us quickly close this one because we've got one final question after this, then we'll wrap things up. So we'll share those results. Big majority this time, 89%. Said £123, and it is correct. Yes, so it is an average weekly of 123. So that's the minimum they need to earn per week on average in order to qualify for statutory sick pay. Okay, we'll move on to the final question, which is what is the maximum number of weeks between two period instances, incapacities to work, or PIWs, should just call them PIWs, for the two periods to be classed as linked. So what's the maximum number of weeks between two PIWs for the two periods to be classed as linked? So we have, is it 38 weeks between the two? Is it 56 weeks between the two? Or is it 8? Or is it 12 weeks between the two? So remember, this is between two different periods of sickness. How many weeks before they can be classed as separate? Remember, all the answers for these as well have been in the presentation. So if anyone has downloaded them, maybe you'll find the answer in there. Who knows? Okay, so we have had a minute now. So we'll wrap this one up now. See, it's ticking up a little bit still for the voting. So I'll give it a couple of seconds more. Okay, it seems to have halted. So let's close that one now and share the results. So again, loving the 80% here. So we've got 86% have gone with 8 weeks, and again, 86% are correct. So 8 weeks is the maximum number of weeks, between two periods of sickness before for them to be classed as linked, basically. So they have to be off 9 or more weeks for it to be classed as a separate section. A separate instance, sorry. Okay, and that wraps the quiz up, and it also wraps up the majority of the session today. But before I do leave you all, and we go on quiet to answer any remaining questions, just want to run through some further support that you have available to you. There's quite a lot here. So first and foremost, we have our help center. So at sage.co.uk/help. So you've got our knowledge base there. You've got the support guides. You've also got webinars. So don't forget, we run webinars every Thursday at 2 o'clock. So if you go to the help center, you'll see the webinars button in the top right-hand corner. That will take you to what's coming up, and you can register for any that you see fit or that you'd like to see as well. There also is a link to any previous recordings of sessions as well if you want to watch a previous one. There are also videos, and of course, if you need to speak to our support team, the get in touch options can be found in our help center as well. And lastly, we've got Sage University. So if you'd like to further any learning on Sage Payroll, head on over to sageu.com, where you can find a vast library, free of charge as well, for various different e-learnings. You've got certifications as well, if you'd like to get Sage certified, as well as bite-sized learning. All can be done at your own pace and in your own time as well. So whenever you get a spare moment, if you'd like to learn a bit more, then Sage University is in fact the place to be. So that wraps up the full session. I'm going to pop on mute shortly to help the guys out with the questions. I can see there's still a few coming through. So again, thank you for that. If you are leaving us at this stage, it's been an absolute pleasure to have so many people attend this session today. I hope you've enjoyed it and hopefully learned a little bit more about statutory sick pay as well. Don't forget as well, when you do leave the session, there is a short survey that you get directed to. Of course, it is completely optional, but it does mean a lot to both myself and Duncan, who is not with us today. But he and I both look at that feedback and we really try to make changes based on what is involved in that. So again, it really means a lot to us if you take that small time just to fill that in for us as well. We can't make these better and improve them without that feedback, so thank you in advance. So yeah, I'm going to pop on mute now and I'll help the guys answer some questions. Then I'll be back shortly to say our final goodbyes. So thanks again. Okay, so we're going to wrap things up there just whilst Matthew and Matt get them final questions answered and finished off. Just a quick note at this point, whilst I say our goodbyes, if you want a copy of those Q&As, now's your chance to copy and paste into a Word document just to keep a hold of them as well if you'd like to have them for any future reference and to get that handout downloaded. Once again, it's been absolutely fantastic to see so many of you on today's session, so thank you so much for joining us. I always like to see a nice busy session, as nervous as it makes me presenting in front of so many of you, but it's been an absolute pleasure to see you all, and like I said, hopefully you've learned a few things. So that's it from me. So I'm going to be shutting the session down shortly. So again, thank you so much. Don't forget as well, actually, before I do that, check out any future webinars that are upcoming as well by jumping over to the Help Center, clicking that webinars button. We do have them quite regularly running as well, including a Get Your Payroll Done special with Duncan that's every third Thursday of the month. So again, thank you so much. I hope you're all looking after yourselves out there and continuing to stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.